The discovery at Kepler Station Captain Marcus Webb stared through the reinforced glass at what the Zephyrian guards called Specimen 947. The creature sat hunched in the corner of its cage, long purple hair cascading over shoulders that trembled with each breath. The identification panel read, Lyrian female, captured during pacification of Lyros Prime, last known survivor of extinct species. But Marcus saw something the aliens had missed. Those weren't the empty eyes of a broken animal. They held intelligence, pain, and something else that made his chest tighten with recognition. They held hope. "Fascinating specimen, isn't it?" hissed Commander Vextar, the station's Zephyrian overseer. His scaled face twisted into what might have been a smile. "Your species will learn much from studying the failures of others." Marcus kept his expression neutral, though rage burned in his gut. 3 months ago, humanity had made first contact with the Zephyrian collective. The aliens had welcomed humans as junior partners in their galactic community, offering technology and knowledge in exchange for Earth's resources and military service. What they hadn't mentioned was the zoo. Kepler Station orbited a dead world, in the outer rim, housing the collective's biological preservation center. Hundreds of species filled its cages, each labeled as the last remnant of civilizations that had failed to adapt to collective rule. The Zephyrians called it conservation. Marcus called it genocide. How many species are housed here? Marcus asked, fighting to keep his voice steady. Currently, 237 extinct species, 43 endangered ones still fighting integration. Vextar's tail swished with satisfaction. "Don't worry, Captain. Humanity shows great promise. You're unlikely to end up in here." The Lyrian woman looked up then, her violet eyes meeting Marcus's through the glass. In that moment, something passed between them. Understanding. Determination. She pressed her palm against the barrier, and Marcus found himself doing the same. "What was her world like?" Marcus asked. "Lyros Prime? Beautiful, really. Crystal cities floating on anti-grav platforms. Incredible artistic achievements. Their mistake was refusing to surrender their independence." Vextar's tone was matter-of-fact, as if discussing the weather. "We tried diplomacy first, of course. When that failed, we introduced atmospheric toxins. Very humane. Most died in their sleep." Marcus's hand clenched into a fist. The Lyrian woman seemed to sense his anger, tilting her head slightly. Her lips moved silently, and though he couldn't hear through the soundproof barrier, he could read the words she mouthed. Help. That night, Marcus returned to his quarters and activated his quantum communicator. The message he sent back to Earth was simple, but would change everything. The collective isn't what they claim. We're not partners. We're being evaluated for extinction. Recommend immediate military preparation. War is coming whether we choose it or not. As he ended the transmission, Marcus made a silent promise to the woman in the cage. Humanity wouldn't end up as specimens in alien zoos, not while he drew breath. The spark of rebellion Dr. Evelyn Cross had seen enough. As head of the human medical team on Kepler Station, she'd been granted access to the preservation facility under the guise of studying alien biology. What she'd found made her stomach turn. The Lyrian woman, who'd managed to communicate that her name was Zara through desperate sign language, was dying. Not from disease or injury, but from despair. Her species had evolved with strong empathic connections to their kind. Being the last of her people was slowly killing her soul. "The atmospheric mixture is wrong," Evelyn told Commander Vextar during their daily briefing. "Her homeworld had different oxygen ratios. She needs adjustments to survive." "Specimen 947 survival is not priority," Vextar replied dismissively. "We have genetic samples. The living subject is merely for behavioral study." Evelyn bit back her response. 3 weeks had passed since Captain Webb's message to Earth. 3 weeks of watching Zara fade while pretending to be loyal to the collective. The waiting was agony. That night, Evelyn made her move. Using her medical override codes, she accessed Zara's containment cell during the night cycle. The Lyrian woman looked up as the door hissed open, her eyes widening in surprise. "My name is Evelyn," she whispered, pulling out a portable atmospheric regulator. "I'm here to help." As the device filled the cell with Lyros Prime's native air mixture, color returned to Zara's skin. She breathed deeply for the first time in months, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," Zara whispered in accented standard. I had given up hope." "Never give up hope," Evelyn replied. "My people have a saying, the only way evil triumphs is when good people do nothing. We're done doing nothing." Over the following nights, Evelyn smuggled in others. Lieutenant Commander James Rodriguez, the station's communications officer. Chief Engineer Patricia Okafor, who'd been horrified by the efficiency of the collective's extinction protocols. One by one, they formed a cell of resistance. "Earth has been busy," Rodriguez reported during one of their secret meetings. "Fleet. Admiral Harrison has convinced the Global Defense Council. They're mobilizing everything we have." "That won't be enough," Okafor said grimly. "The collective has thousands of worlds, millions of ships." "They also have a weakness," Zara interjected. All eyes turned to her. Over the weeks, she'd become their unofficial intelligence source, sharing everything she'd learned about collective operations. They've never faced a species that fights back after first contact. They rely on fear and overwhelming force in the opening strikes. "What are you suggesting?" Marcus asked. He'd joined their group after accidentally discovering their activities. Zara's eyes gleamed with something that hadn't been there before, the fire of revenge. "The collective believes humanity is already broken, already surrendering. They won't expect you to strike first." Rodriguez leaned forward. "What do you know about their fleet positions?" "Everything," Zara smiled grimly. "Before my world fell, I was a tactical analyst for the Lyrian Defense Force. I've been watching their patterns for months, memorizing their weaknesses. The implications hit them all at once. They weren't just planning an escape anymore. They were planning humanity's opening move in what would become the greatest war the galaxy had ever seen. When Earth's fleet arrives," Marcus said slowly, "they'll be expecting to rescue a few prisoners. Instead, they'll be walking into the perfect ambush," Evelyn finished, "with inside intelligence and the element of surprise." Zara pressed her hand to the table, her voice firm with resolve. "My people died believing they were alone, but we're not alone anymore. Together, we'll make the collective pay for what they've done." The die was cast. Humanity's first galactic war would begin not with grand declarations or formal challenges, but with a desperate rescue mission that would shatter the collective's assumptions about human nature forever. The battle for Kepler Station, the UES Defiance, dropped out of hyperspace at exactly Euro 300 station time, followed by 12 more human vessels. Fleet Admiral Catherine Harrison had brought everything Earth could spare: destroyers, cruisers, and the experimental dreadnought UES Titan's Wrath. Inside Kepler Station, Marcus felt the subtle vibration as proximity alarms began wailing. The plan was in motion. "Unknown vessels, identify yourselves," came Vextar's voice over the comm system. "This is Admiral Harrison of the Terran Defense Fleet," came the response. "We're here to collect our people." "Your people belong to the collective now," Vextar hissed. "Withdraw or face destruction." Marcus grinned. The Zephyrian commander was following the script perfectly. Overwhelming arrogance, threats, assumption of superiority. He had no idea what was coming. "Evelyn, Zara, are you ready?" Marcus whispered into his concealed communicator. "Medical bay secure." Evelyn's voice crackled back. "All human staff extracted. Beginning phase 2. "Engineering reports ready," Patricia's voice joined in. Station shields and weapons will fail on your mark. The beauty of their plan lay in its simplicity. The collective had become so confident in their superiority that they'd grown lazy. Human servants had been given access to critical systems without proper oversight. Now that trust would be their downfall. Outside, the collective's defense fleet was moving into attack formation. 50 warships against 13 human vessels. The aliens were already savoring their victory. "Admiral Harrison," Marcus transmitted on the agreed frequency, "the package is ready for delivery." "Understood, Captain. All ships, execute operation. Revelation." The first surprise came when Kepler Station's shields simply vanished. The second came when its defensive batteries turned on the collective fleet instead of the humans. The third and most devastating surprise came when the extinct species in the zoo began breaking free. Zara had spent weeks using her medical bay access to distribute antidotes and stimulants to the imprisoned beings. Species the collective thought, broken beyond repair, suddenly revealed they'd been pretending, waiting for their moment. The station erupted into chaos as hundreds of extinct beings tore through their captors. Beings with natural armor, telepathic abilities, energy manipulation, powers, all the species the collective had captured rather than studied properly. "This is impossible!" Vextar screamed as his command center filled with smoke. "They're extinct! They're broken!" "That's your problem," Marcus said, stepping into the command center with Zara at his side. "You never learned the difference between broken and bending. We bend, but we don't break." Through the viewports, the space battle raged, but it wasn't the one-sided slaughter the collective had expected. Human ships moved in patterns that seemed chaotic, but were actually coordinated chaos, a fighting style no orderly military mind could predict. The UES Titan's wrath demonstrated why humanity had built it. Instead of engaging the largest collective, Dreadnought directly, it rammed through 3 smaller cruisers, using their debris as a shield while firing through the wreckage. Tactical genius born from desperation. "You primitive savages," Vextar snarled, drawing his plasma weapon. "You'll never defeat the collective. We rule 10,000 worlds." "And that's exactly why you'll lose," Zara said calmly. "You rule through fear. We fight for love." The plasma bolt meant for Marcus never reached its target. Zara's body simply shifted. Her skin became crystalline, deflecting the energy harmlessly away. Another surprise. The Lyrians weren't extinct because they were weak. They were extinct because they'd trusted the collective's promises of peace. "Impossible," Vextar whispered. "Our scans showed you were powerless." "Your scans showed what I wanted them to show," Zara replied. "My people were scientists, artists, and warriors. We chose to hide our abilities, hoping for peaceful coexistence. That mistake cost us our world. It won't cost us this battle." As collective ships began exploding around the station, a new transmission filled the comm channels. Not just human voices, but dozens of species thought extinct. "This is the Free Worlds Alliance," Admiral Harrison announced. "Any collective vessels that surrender will be treated with honor. Any that continue fighting will be shown the same mercy you showed, these imprisoned peoples." The battle for Kepler Station lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the collective's outer rim fleet was destroyed, and humanity had gained something more valuable than victory. They had gained allies who understood the true cost of freedom. The collective's counterattack 3 months after Kepler Station, the collective's response came like a hurricane of metal and fire. Supreme Commander Thisakar himself led the Retribution fleet, 500 ships carrying the might of 1,000 worlds. Captain Marcus Webb, now promoted to Commodore and commanding the defense of the Vega system, watched the enemy fleet drop out of hyperspace. The numbers were overwhelming, but humanity had learned much in those 3 months. "All ships, this is Defiance Actual," Marcus transmitted to the 40 human vessels under his command. "Remember the plan. We're not here to win a glorious battle. We're here to buy time and send a message." The message was crucial. Earth's factories were working around the clock, but humanity needed months, not weeks, to build a proper fleet. Every day they could delay the collective was a day closer to evening the odds. "Commodore," came Lieutenant Torres's voice from the sensor station. "We're receiving a transmission." The main screen flickered to life, revealing Supreme Commander Thissakar. The alien was massive even by Zephyrian standards, his scales bearing the scars of countless battles. "Primitive humans," Thissakar's voice rumbled with contempt. "You have made a grave error. The collective has ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. Your pathetic rebellion ends today." "Actually," Marcus replied calmly, "I think you're the one who made the error." Before Thissakar could respond, Marcus activated the system-wide broadcast. Every ship, every station, every inhabited world in range would hear what came next. "My name is Commodore Marcus Webb of the Terran Defense Fleet. 3 months ago, we discovered that the Zephyrian Collective isn't the benevolent alliance they claim to be. They're genocidal conquerors who maintain museums filled with the last survivors of extinct species they deliberately exterminated." The transmission continued, showing footage from Kepler Station, testimonies from freed prisoners, evidence of the collective's crimes. Most importantly, it included technical specifications for human weapons and tactics. "To every world listening," Marcus continued, "you have a choice. Join the collective and eventually end up in their zoo, or stand with humanity and fight for freedom." Thessakar's roar of rage shook his command ship. "Enough! All ships attack! Leave no human vessel intact!" The battle began as expected, hundreds of collective ships swarming the human formation. But Marcus had learned from history. When facing overwhelming odds, sometimes the best strategy was to make the enemy win too expensively. "All ships, execute." "Thermopylae Protocol," Marcus ordered. The human fleet didn't retreat or scatter. Instead, they formed a tight defensive sphere around Vega Station and fought with calculated desperation. Every human ship was equipped with experimental weapons, rail guns that could punch through collective shields, fusion mines that destroyed ships into mini-suns, and something the engineers called kamikaze drones. The UES Vengeful Spirit was the first to fall, but not before launching every fighter it carried directly into the enemy formation. Each fighter was piloted by volunteers who'd seen the footage from Kepler Station. They fought not just for victory, but for justice. As the battle raged, something unexpected happened. Ships began dropping out of hyperspace, not collective reinforcements, but vessels from a dozen different species. The broadcasts had worked. "This is Captain Vorthak of the Kandarian Republic," came a transmission in broken standard. "We stand with humanity! Altarian Defense Force reporting for duty! The Centauri Liberation Front is here!" What had begun as humanity's desperate last stand became something else entirely. The first real challenge to collective dominance in millennia. Thissakar found himself facing not 40 human ships, but 200 vessels from 20 different species, all united by the simple human concept that freedom was worth dying for. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, both fleets were scattered and broken. Thissakar's flagship limped away with less than a quarter of his original force. But the real victory wasn't tactical, it was philosophical. For the first time in 10,000 years, the collective had been forced to retreat. And across the galaxy, worlds that had accepted subjugation began to remember what it felt like to hope. Marcus's final transmission as his damaged ship drifted in space was simple. "This is just the beginning. Humanity doesn't surrender. Humanity doesn't give up. And now, neither do you." The collective's era of unopposed dominance was over. Birth of the Terran Empire. 2 years after the first shot was fired at Kepler Station, Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the UES Liberation, humanity's first super-dreadnought. Around him, the combined fleet of the Terran Empire stretched. Beyond the horizon, 3,000 ships representing 47 species united under the blue and white banner of human leadership. "Admiral," reported Captain Chen from the sensor station, "Collective High Command is responding to our ultimatum." The main screen showed the familiar face of Supreme Overlord Zesathyra, the Collective's ultimate ruler. The ancient Zephyrian's scales had dulled with age, but his eyes still burned with imperial arrogance. "Admiral Webb," Zesathyra's voice carried the weight of millennia. "You cannot seriously believe your mongrel alliance can challenge 10,000 years of collective rule." "Actually, I do," Marcus replied. "And I think deep down, you know it too. Otherwise, you wouldn't be talking to me right now." The truth was visible in the tactical display. What had begun as humanity's desperate rebellion had become an unstoppable wave of liberation. World after world had joined the Terran Empire, not through conquest, but through choice. The human concept of voluntary alliance was proving more powerful than forced subjugation. "Your terms are impossible," Zesathyra continued. "Complete withdrawal from occupied territories, recognition of species independence, dismantling of the preservation facilities. The Collective has never faced humanity before," Marcus interrupted. "We're not like the other species you've conquered. We don't know when to quit." Behind Marcus, the bridge crew represented the Empire's diversity. Zara, now serving as intelligence chief, her crystalline abilities making her invaluable for communication across species barriers. Chief Engineer Okafor, whose fusion of human and alien technologies had revolutionized spacecraft design. Commander Rodriguez, who'd developed the translation protocols that allowed 47 different species to coordinate in battle. "You offer us slavery disguised as partnership," Zesathyra said. "Under human leadership, you claim, but leadership nonetheless." "Wrong again," Marcus smiled. "We offer you something the Collective never understood, the right to choose. Any world that wants to leave the Empire can do so. Any species that prefers isolation can have it. That's the difference between conquest and liberation." The communication ended abruptly, but Marcus had expected that. The final battle had been inevitable since Kepler Station. The only question was whether it would happen in collective space or human space. "Admiral," Zara reported from her station, "our deep space sensors are detecting massive hyperspace distortions. The entire collective fleet is mobilizing." "How many ships?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. "Preliminary estimates suggest 15,000 vessels. Every ship they have, from every world they control." The bridge fell silent. Even with their alliance, the Terran Empire could field only 3,000 ships. The odds were 5-1 against. "Sir," came a tentative voice from communications. "Officer Park, we're receiving priority transmissions from Earth, New Geneva, and Proxima Command. They're asking for orders." Marcus looked out at the star field, thinking of all the species depending on human leadership. Thinking of Zara's people, extinct except for her. Thinking of the thousands of beings still imprisoned in collective facilities across the galaxy. "Send this message to all Empire forces," Marcus said finally. "In 3 days, we will face the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. The odds are against us. The enemy outnumbers us 5-1. By all military logic, we should surrender." He paused, letting his words carry to every ship in the fleet. "But here's what the Collective never learned about humanity. We've never been very good at military logic. We're the species that charged machine guns on horseback, that went to the moon in tin cans, that decided slavery was wrong even when it was profitable. We don't fight because we're certain of victory. We fight because some things are worth fighting for." The response was immediate. From human ships, alien vessels, and every mixed crew in between, a single message flooded the communication channels. "Understood, Admiral. Ready to make history." 3 days later, at the Battle of Saul's Gate, the Terran Empire faced the Collective's full might. The battle lasted 36 hours and changed the galaxy forever. When it ended, the Collective fleet was scattered, their supreme overlord dead, and their 10,000-year reign over. But the real victory wasn't the destruction of tyranny, it was the birth of something new. An empire built not on conquest, but on the radical human idea that every being deserved the right to choose their own destiny. Years later, historians would mark the Battle of Saul's Gate as the moment the Terran Empire truly began. But Marcus knew better. It had begun the moment he looked into a caged alien's eyes and decided that some things were worth risking everything for. The galaxy would never be the same. The end.